All right.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Everybody did well. Everybody excited. Everybody pumped. Well, the audience is so too bad for you. All right. Welcome everyone to the first match in round one of the public sector debate competition. We're very excited to get going. And we're looking forward to what is going to be a very exciting exchange of ideas. So you've been through the training and we talked about what is expected from you. But just a quick refresher, the first speaker has 7 minutes, the second speaker has 6 minutes, and the third speaker has 5 minutes. The reply speaker speaks for 3 minutes. For the first three speakers, your first minute is protected time, and so too is your final minute. So no points of information will be allowed during the first and last. At the end of the first minute, you will hear the ding of a bell. And when you are entering your final minute, you will also hear the ding of a bell. You have used all of your time, 7, 6, 5, and you hear 2 dings. And you will be allowed 15 seconds to wrap up your final thoughts after you take your consistent ding. Yes, which means argument done. You have to wrap up 30. Say after that point, it will be completed. This is that. I am Andre Palmer. I'll be the chair of this match. And with me, we have
Shana Bennett, I'm the wing adjudicator.
And Shannon Stevenson, also serving as wing.
So yes, is there, before we begin, is there any questions? Are there any concerns that you want to be addressed? Clarify, speak no, or follow the piece if I want to join. Proposition, you're good?
Yep, we are.
Opposition, you're equally
Good.
That's fine. So at the end of the match, the judges will leave the delivery for about 15 minutes or so. We'll try to do it quickly to facilitate the match that is after you guys. And once the scores are announced, you get out to those questions. Okay. All right. So with that being said, I should have brought the motion with me, but I did not.
The move before the House is be resolved that paternity leave should be afforded to fathers in the public sector in the same way that maternity leave is granted to mothers.
Right. So with that, we would like to introduce the first speaker to open this debate. The first speaker comes from the National Work Agency. Her name is Leon Newman.
Honorable judges, distinguished guests, fellow team members, my most worthy opponents, timekeepers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Team NWA is here to propose the move. Be it resolved that paternity leave should be afforded to fathers in the public sector in the same way that maternity leave is granted to mothers. At this point, we would like to define key terms. The Collins Dictionary defines paternity leave to mean a period of paid or unpaid absence from work granted to a man by his employer immediately after the birth of his child. According to the staff orders, maternity leave shall be granted to female employees on no more than 3 occasions, consistent with the provision of the Maternity Leave Act of 1979. Officers completing not less than 12 months continuous service, special maternity leave on full salary for a period not exceeding 8 weeks, special cases where a permanent secretary and heads of department may grant leave without pay. Do recall that the mood states that paternity leave should be granted in the same way that maternity leave is granted. The term "in the same way" is defined in the Cambridge Dictionary as equal to or same amount. We are therefore redefining the mood as follows. Be it resolved that parental leave to include both paternity and maternity leave be afforded equally to both parents in the public sector. We strongly and wholeheartedly agree with this statement, and at the end, so will everyone. Parental leave is not currently granted to fathers in the public sector, and we need to enforce this change. Therefore, in redefining the mood, we are proposing that parental leave be afforded equally to both parents. As the first speaker, I will speak on the benefits of equal parental leave to the well-being of families and gender equality. The second speaker will address cost effectiveness in the long term and supporting the mother's career. And our third speaker will address sharing psychological impact of having a child. My opponent is going to come here and try to confuse the situation by stating that paternity leave is not necessary because men and women are different. They might even say men don't need paternity leave. But we say there should be gender equality. My opponent may also say that the government can't afford this noble and necessary powerful decision because of scarce resources, or it will be a burden on our budget. However, we just had a $4 billion budget surplus in our last budget, tabled by the Honorable Nigel Clark, Minister of Finance and the Public Sector. For ease of ensuring that we are all on one accord, our mood state, be it resolved that parental leave to include both paternity and maternity leave be afforded equally to both parents in the public sector. We will agree that the vision of the public sector through the Transformation Implementation Unit is to create a modern public service that is fair, values people, and consistently delivers high-quality service, which is in line with our Vision 2030, which states Jamaica should be the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business. According to studies by Pets and Neustar 2018, Erta et al. 2014, Has and Hong 2008, paternity leave taking and the increased length of paternity leave are associated with more frequent father involvement through the child's life. Having time off when a child is born may provide fathers with time to feel comfortable performing parenting tasks, as well as to bond with their newborn child, REL 2014. Equal parental leave is not only fair to fathers, but beneficial to the whole family. Gender equality has been a long-standing issue in our society, and parental leave is one way to bridge the gap between gender biases. Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Culture, Gender and Entertainment, Denzel Thorpe, while speaking at the International Men's Day Forum at the University of the West Indies in November 2008, stated, and I quote, "For gender to be truly transformative, it has to be inclusive," end of quote. If this statement truly represents the position of the government, how can it be that when a woman has a child, the mother is given parental leave, but the father isn't granted parental leave? How can it be that when a woman has a child, the mother is given parental leave, but the father isn't granted parental leave? For the family to be prosperous, for the public sector to deliver quality service to their internal customer, we say, let's curb gender inequality in the workplace. Let's promote both parent-child bonding. Let's increase gender equality at home. Ladies and gentlemen, the matter is simply this, as I urge and beseech you, even my worthy opponents, give fathers the opportunity to fulfill their responsibility to their child. Support equal parental leave. I thank
We would like to thank the first speaker for opening this debate. honorable judges, our distinguished opponents, the NWA, our faithful cheerleaders, and faithful commissioner, management and coaching team, greetings.
Greetings.
Today we have come to add our voice to the move before us. Be it resolved that paternity leave should be afforded to fathers in the public sector in the same way as maternity leave is granted to mothers. We wish to adopt the definitions you have put forward, and we wish to indicate to you that from our analysis, our position on the moot is paternity leave should be afforded to fathers in the public sector, but not in the same way that maternity leave is granted to mothers. In that, paternity leave should not be given under the same conditions, in the same terms as maternity leave is given to mothers. Let us consider the Maternity Leave Act of 1979 that allows for women to access up to 40 days maternity leave along with any vacation leave that's available to them and up to 65 days of no pay leave. Let's consider that they are required to provide medical certification of their pregnancy, them being with child. Let us consider that our staff orders in the public service of 2004 also makes provision for mothers to so access this facility as is legislated. I wonder if we have considered the genesis of maternity. Have we considered the thoughts of our forefathers when they legislated in 1979 that mothers had a particular need, and it's from that the need for maternity leave emanated? Have we considered that mothers were granted this leave in the minds of the legislators then because they had to recover from a period that challenged their physiological state? Have we considered that, yes, mothers, we do not need any magnifying glass to recognize that our forefathers saw this strictly as a medical issue? We acknowledge that, yes, after almost 40 years of passing this legislation, we have evolved, and yes, we have recognized that mothers benefit from bonding with their child in these formative years. And so, yes, we agree that fathers need to share in the bonding of the child as well. But we put it to you, worthy opponents, that fathers do not have the same biological recovery needs and should not be equally granted paternal leave in this respect. Further to that, we need to recognize that we have a responsibility as public servants to engender in strategic ways a culture where fathers recognize that they need to be involved in the bonding process of their child, which does not begin at birth and does not end in 40 days or an additional vacation leave period or after 65 days. We need to ensure that we facilitate a culture that they appreciate their presence with the child long after maternity leave. Paternity leave will not fix that. I said.
So you're saying that, in essence, our forefathers, based on what they have presented and worked on over 40 years, and where we are at as a nation, especially in terms of the Vision 2030, we should stop the Vision 2030 about raising families?
No, we're not suggesting that. We're suggesting that the genesis of maternity leave was from the recovery needs that existed. And those needs do not equate to the needs of a father in seeking to build families in Jamaica to make it that place of choice to live, work, raise families, and live. Let us consider a mother after having given birth. In fact, during and after giving birth, the physiological issues that she encounters. Life science suggests to us that the legs are swollen, the weight gain up to 35 pounds, the feet can't fit in the nice shoes anymore. During confinement, the vaginal canal expands, and depending on the size of the child, and some of us come up very big, imagine how much stretch we have caused among mothers. Let us consider those who are experience tears when they are giving birth, and how much some mothers have to get up to 40 stitches in order for them to recover. We put it to you that fathers do not have this need, and so we cannot build a rationale of equality or equity and say that fathers should get paternity leave in the same way as mothers should. We do not believe that. The dynamics are vivid. The mothers and fathers have varied needs, and we must also appreciate that we cannot establish a paternity leave situation in the same way as it's available to mothers in maternity instances without acknowledging that public sector debate cannot take place in isolation, as the majority of the labor force in Jamaica is not employed within the public service. And we must consider the economic and other issues, other situations that will face the country as a whole as it seeks to implement this within the public sector and beyond. I put it to you that in a male-dominated organization within the public sector, the JDF, the JCAv, the police and the soldiers, imagine if 50 police from Denham Town Police Station were to apply for paternity leave at the same time, and we see the headline, 50 police out of the 55 at Denham Town are proceeding on paternity leave for 40 days and 84 vacation days and 65 days. Are you suggesting, my opponents, that we should have acting police and acting soldiers? From where shall they come? You see, the conditions must be different, and we are not being sexist, but we stand strong on the statement that equality and equity are not the same thing, so we do not buy that argument. You see, we are struggling as an economy, we're struggling as a nation, and yes, parental needs exist, and yes, there are arguments that can be brought forth about fathers being missing in childhood, but we put it to you that 40 days plus in the early stages of the child's life will not fix that problem in our society. I put it to you that fathers, yes, should be granted paternity leave, but not in the same way that maternity leave is granted to mothers. Then together we can really chart that path to make Jamaica that place of choice to live, work, raise families.
We would like to thank the first opposition member for her spirited contribution to this debate. We now invite the second speaker from side opposition to advance the case of the opposing team.
Honorable judges, distinguished guests, team members, worthy opponents, good afternoon. Good morning. Team NWA is strongly in agreement of the moot. Be it resolved that paternity leave should be afforded to fathers in the public sector in the same way that maternity leave is afforded to mothers. May I interject and address the issues raised by my opponents? Firstly, we all know that the JCAv and the civil servants of Jamaica that keep us safe, we all know that those institutions are noble institutions that are responsible and promote healthy lifestyles, firstly. Secondly, I would like to address the issue of funding and bring to you the fact that we have, of course, conservatively estimated the cost of paternity leave to the public sector by estimating the total replacement cost due to employees on maternity leave in the NWA, averaging over 3 years and extended into the public sector. So there is provision for that. You can... Go ahead.
In the calculation of maternity leave I would assume that you would have been taking into consideration childcare leave in the organization.
Right.
What childcare leave you have been considering on the male population? Considering that a man can report a child even up to 99.
All right. Let me address that shortly. Two things will be highlighted in this presentation, which include the economic effects of parental leave and father supporting the woman's career, which is very important. The proposition is of the opinion that the opportunity cost of short-term costs incurred by fathers offered paid parental leave is well worth it based on societal benefits. From an economic perspective, it is believed that parental leave will provide the greatest benefits and will lower some costs on the government books. After the birth of a newborn baby, many fathers suffer from sleep deprivation because he has to take on the night shift when he gets home. Sleep deprivation is dangerous. It causes accidents, lowers concentration and problem-solving skills, negatively impacts short and long-term memory, puts one at risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and diabetes, and, my friends, lowers sex drive. There have been a total of 155 road fatalities as of July 2018, and prior to that, 144 in the previous year. Overruled, denied. Also, sleep deprivation causes virus-prone issues. According to the Archives of Internal Medicine 2009 from the Harvard Health, especially in the aspect of mortality, severe sleep apnea increases dying early by 46%, quoted in 2009, and based on that study, 6,400 men were affected. Also, 51% of adults worldwide do not get enough sleep, according to travelagentcentral.com. This sounds like fathers who will increase the healthcare bill. This study will not be productive either. Therefore, if parental leave is granted to fathers equally as mothers, it would benefit the government because that father would be healthier, rested, and more productive. So then, in the short run, we can afford to give fathers paid parental leave. What would it cost the government? Not much. Paid parental leave would not cost the government more than 30% of an employee's pay for another staff member to act in his position. In some situations, the workload of someone going on leave may be distributed among other employees. Just maybe in a few cases, the government may have to pay the full salary to a new staff member contracted to work for someone who goes off on leave. A bit of information for you. In an article entitled "The Real Cost of Parental Leave for Business," Fortune and Dell in 2015, it was reported that 91% of business owners in California, USA, reported granting staff paid leave had a positive or no negative effect at all on profitability and performance. Ladies and gentlemen, it is widely accepted that men are able to work long hours and advance their career faster than traditional mother who initially took up the majority of the childcare responsibility during maternity leave. According to Collins et al. 2018, who conducted a multi-phase study for the Harvard Business Review, supporting male caregiving initiatives at a societal and organizational level could represent a very positive step in increasing gender equality, time off for childcare, and reducing the impact on maternity leave on mothers. I say, let us support the woman's career. Let us support the woman's career. For want of a nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost.
We'd like to thank Miguel, the second speaker from the proposition, for advancing the line of arguments from the proposition bench. We now invite the second speaker, Kingsley Mackenzie Henry, from the opposing team to continue the line of argumentation from side opposition.
Honorable judges, my colleagues from Africa, colleagues from Customs Commission, it's nice to see. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a strict here. But when I listen to the second speaker for the proposition, I want to just jump the script and just deal with some of the instruments that he used. But I'll take on one. There was a failed attempt to link new father sleep deprivation with road accidents in Jamaica. Was that for you? So I won't even go down that road. Ladies and gentlemen, there are many studies in Jamaica dealing with the issues of paternity. But there's a seminal one that I thought by the proposition would have raised. I say they have not pointed to it, we will introduce it. There's a study that was commissioned by the Bureau of Gender Affairs, which was undertaken by the Jamaica Civil Service Association in 2011. And in that survey, there is overwhelming support for the granting of paternity leave, a position that we as opposition support. But our point of departure is that we don't believe that it should be granted in the same way, the same condition, the same time as our maternity leave is mandated by the Maternity Leave Act of 1979 or the Public Service Staff Order of 2004. That is our point of departure. So wherein in that survey that was conducted in 2011, it showed that 79% of women supported men getting paternity leave, but only 43% agreed strongly that paternity leave should be granted equally. And as a proud father who was there for the birth of my child, I do not think and believe and support the idea that men and women should be treated equally. Neither do the majority of women. So I put it to you this morning that the proposition is in the minority in their arguments, and that the majority of women in Jamaica support our position that men and women ought not to be treated. Why is it that most women don't believe that men should be treated equally in Jamaica? Because there are some socio-cultural realities that we can't ignore. Men and women in Jamaica don't behave the same. We don't. So O'Neill granted a presentation at the International Men's Day Symposium at the University of the West Indies in 2018, talking in the context of the findings of the 2011 survey, pointed out that one of the concerns that was raised is how do you ensure that a Jamaican man is going to utilize that paternity leave given for the purpose intended. The second speaker spoke about men being tired. Where's men are tired? That's where Giannis. That's why we're tired. Not because we're home taking care of the babies, but because while the new mothers are there taking care of the babies, we are out trying to procreate and create other families. That is the socio-cultural reality of Jamaica. So we're not tired by being up with the baby, we're tired by being up with the other baby mother that we have on the side that we're trying to create. That is a challenge. But, Mr. Honorable Judges, even if we were to concede that men will be able to account for the time, we are taking another position, and that other position is that the recovery that the mother needs, the caregiving, it can be catered for by others. As is the reality now. We have mother-in-laws, we have our own mothers and family members, we have paid caregivers that can assist the mother during recovery period. There's no need scientifically for the fathers to be present. There's no need for us to be calling on the taxpayers of Jamaica to grant men equal time so that they can be home. There are other alternatives that we can consider. And our third speaker will put one or two of those alternatives on the table. The other point coming out of the survey that was raised, and O'Neill Grant put it, and I have great respect for him because he's probably the chief proponent of paternity leave in Jamaica as the leader of the Civil Service Association. But he points out that one of the big challenges that we have is dealing with the likelihood of Jamaican men having multiple baby mothers at the same time or in close succession. How do we deal with that reality? You can't separate a woman from the baby growing inside her. But you can separate a man because a man can have several baby mothers at the same time. How do we deal with that? In his own word, he says, our anecdotal experience has been that men who have multiple children with multiple women are posing a challenge to the definition of who is a father and posing a challenge in us drafting paternity leave legislation in Jamaica. We must deal with the socio-cultural realities in Jamaica, and we can't run from them. And because they are what they are, we are resolute in our position that men and women should not be granted paternity leave in the same way in the Jamaican context. Maybe one day we'll get there, but we're not there yet. We wish to point to another study, because a lot of times they don't have the data locally. But internationally there is some data, particularly in the European Union. And we point to a RAND study of 2016 that was commissioned to look at paternity leave or parental leave within the European Union. And we were hard pressed to find any situations where men and women were granted equal leave entitlement. Mind you, in those countries they have paternity leave, they have maternity leave, and they have parental leave. But nowhere was paternity leave being granted in the same way. Men were getting paternity leave from 1 year to a high of 64. And our position is that in the Jamaican context, there's nothing to support the equal granting of paternity leave. Let's face another fact quickly, as my time wraps up. The studies show, studies done by Dr. Barry Davidson, CEO of Family Life Ministry, and Professor Sam Ball, show that Jamaican men by age 5 of their children, most of them are gone onto other relationships. That is not as a result of them not being present, because men like me take other leave availability to be there for our child. So paternity leave equality is not something that we should expect.
We would like to thank the second speaker from the opposing team for his contributions, and we now invite the third and final speaker from the opposing team, Caden Gordon, to conclude the substantive arguments for the side opposition.
Honorable judges, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, loyal team members, and my most worthy opponents. It is obvious from your arguments, my worthy opponents, that you do not favor supporting a woman's career and that you do not support gender equality and that a woman's place is in the home taking care of a child. Well, my gallus opponents, I don't care how many children you want to have up there. What we're saying is that if your name is on the birth certificate of that child, then you should be granted the leave and up to 3 times. There you go. And on the matter of childbearing age, I know you are learned, my opponents, but you asked about a man up to age 99 having a child. Would that man be a public servant? What was the question you really wanted to ask?
Point of information.
Yes, taken.
The name, does a name on the birth certificate in the context of Jamaica proves paternity?
Question. Does a man have to be the biological father of a child to be a father? Don't we have adopted fathers? Let me continue. I am here to reiterate the mood. Parental leave should be afforded equally to both parents in the public service. As my colleagues have stated, equal parental leave will foster the right environment to raise families, promote gender equality, improve the health of fathers, support the mother's career, and improve productivity. I will now talk about the psychological impact on the father and mother due to the limited contact hours as parents immediately after the child's birth. According to Crooks and Spine, authors of the book Psychology, Science, Behavior, and Life, published 1988, it was reported that both married career women and married career men with child experience depression. After the birth of the child, a man may feel, neglected, and psychologically, he could suffer from loneliness, and the woman could find it more difficult to give more thought to bonding with her lover, especially after a long day of nurturing the baby on her own. Equal parental leave would have created by opponents the opportunity for reassurance and emotional support to that father. As a mother, I too felt neglected and lonely while struggling with postpartum depression after the birth of my child. My husband was not at home with me in the daytime. Although he came home from work to play his part in nurturing our baby and bonding with me, I felt lonely and desperate for his affection and attention. I just needed him to tend to my emotional needs. My kids denied. My kids, though being an anecdote, represents the 7 to 30% of all new Jamaican mothers who get postpartum depression. This data was published in 2005. I would therefore like to add to this debate that if fathers are afforded equal paternal parental leave, then both parents would better handle the mental challenges that come with childbirth, and there would be more efficient use of time bonding with child and spouse. My learned opponents, let me also re-emphasize that if a father is giving parental leave, it will support Vision 2030, it will bring strides in gender equality, support a woman's career, improve productivity, and serve as a coping mechanism for postpartum depression and other mental challenges. My astute opponents, judges, guests, I'm sure you will stand with me and my colleagues in solidarity and say, it is time for the government to now offer equal parental leave to fathers of the public service. The prosecution rests.
We would like to thank the third speaker from the opposing team for her contributions and for closing the substantive arguments from side opposition. We now invite the third speaker from side opposition, Matthew Smith Carter.
Honorable judges, unworthy opponents, members of the chairing parties. Good morning. It's instructive to first empathize with the situation highlighted by my opponent in regards to her suffering postpartum depression and the need for the father to come home and provide her some love and care just to assist in her getting home. And I draw on my own experience. As a new father, I ensured that I would not have had my lover suffer from the same fate. What did I ensure I did? I took both compassionate leave and vacation leave to tend to those immediate needs. I, of course, did not need maternity leave to address the same. I put it to her, maybe it's important that if the man saw it fit and so right, he should have embraced those needs to address those issues. But I do, of course, empathize. I see no need to delay on the health and recovery time duration between mother and father. And as those have already been appropriately eloquated by my team members. However, I do intend to speak specifically on the economic impact that the granting of such paternity leave in the same way as maternity leave is granted to mothers in the public sector will reap on the Jamaican public sector and the overall Jamaican economy. The sameness being proffered by the proposition is what they fail to acknowledge will truly cause this devastation. Let us first examine who pays for this maternal leave. Now you will definitely say it's the government of Jamaica. Where does the government of Jamaica get money from? It's the taxpayers of this nation who will be called on to finance and fund the provision of this maternal leave arrangement.
Point of information.
Accepted.
I'm trying to understand because based on what the arguments are represented and what you're saying is that you're deviating from the government's plan of the Vision 2030, which is an obligation of the government to ensure that Jamaica is a place to raise families, right? So then, based on the allotment of the budget.
I really want to respond to the point of order, and I would like to point out that a part of the government's Vision 2030 is not solely about raising families, but it's also the place to do business. What is impacting on Jamaicans doing business currently is the low levels of productivity that being cited from Jamaica Productivity Center knows that since the 1970s, productivity levels in Jamaica have been declining year over year by approximately 0.5%. What you are covering in the offering of maternity leave in the same way that maternity leave is being given is for more productivity time to be truncated, therefore further devastating the Jamaican economy. And we could never put such forward. The Jamaican taxpayer is he who will be called on to finance the provision of maternity leave within the public sector. Let us go back to the nexus of maternity leave. It did not arise from policy within government. It arose from legislation. Hence, for maternity leave to be given in the same way, it has to therefore be legislated. Legislation is not specific to the public service, but therefore means that the entire Jamaica and all men in Jamaica should be afforded the same maternity leave. How then does self-employed taximan benefit from maternity leave? Who pays him? Are you then putting forward a position of unfairness and inequality that the self-employed individual will not be able to benefit from that maternal arrangement, but he is being called on to pay for that maternal arrangement within the public sector? I put it to you that it cannot be the case. I also acknowledge that, again, along the lines of the sameness argument, you've ignored the framers of the legislation's intent with maternity leave. Now, they noted that they did not have to spell it out. A woman has to go through a period of gestation before giving birth. So they did not have to put in the legislation that she could not take maternity leave consecutively because it was understood that she can't have a baby after she just comes out of maternity leave. However, if you want for the legislation of maternity leave to be the same as maternity leave, it means that the gentleman who has Anne-Marie pregnant who gives birth in March goes off on his 3 months of maternity leave, then after returning from maternity leave, comes in and files another maternity leave for another 3 months for Belmont. And then after coming off of that maternity leave for another 6 months now in total, goes off on another maternity leave for Antoinette. Who pays for that? We do know that there will be acting arrangements in the public sector. But again, we ask, are you going to be having acting police? Is the training of the police so special? Of course it is. And you cannot have an acting arrangement of police and JCAvsNWA members, and the security of our nation is too important to jeopardize with your information. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the third speaker of the opposing team for closing with the substantive arguments. We will now pause for 60 seconds to allow both teams to collect their thoughts, after which the opposing team will present their reply speaker first, and the opposing team will close this debate. So 60 seconds, 60 seconds will be allowed for you to start to collect your thoughts, and then the opposing team will present first, the proposing team will close. Thank you very much. We now invite the reply speaker from the team opposition to close for his side. And we'll be reminded, I'm sorry, so the speaker will speak for 3 minutes uninterrupted, no points of information will be allowed.
I'm happy that I've been given an award the opportunity to report. I present the last. On July 2nd, 2018, at 10:30 p.m., for the first time I looked into the eyes of Matthew Smith, and immediately a bond was created. Nothing inside me prevented me from wanting to continue that bond with my son, not even the absence of paternal leave. But bonding with my son, I immediately knew, would not be truncated and restricted to a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week period. But that bond would be created for the lifetime of my son. I want to note that our opponents spoke about postpartum depression. Please note, postpartum does occur in men as well. And in all countries that acknowledge this, they offer not paternity leave, but sick leave, which we currently have in the Jamaican context. And we're not stopping the men from taking their sick leave for saving. We cannot put the cart before the donkey. And as such, irresponsible men will always be irresponsible men. And the introduction of paternity leave will not automatically create a sense of responsibility. What we cannot put forward is legislating irresponsible behavior. How many of the men do you think will therefore start taking these leaves in rapid succession to simply place further burden on their employer while they are home gallivanting, while still earning on the taxpayers' dollar? The granting of more leave is not what the public sector needs. The public sector needs more responsible men. Jamaica needs more responsible men. Responsibility does not derive from maternity leave. The national security of our nation, and we note, in the Maternity Leave Act, it spoke specifically when making reference to workers of the JCF and the JDF. And as such, we put it to you that clearly, for maternity leave to be given in the sameness, they will also be included with no variations. We note that we are not opposed in any way to the granting of paternity. We are for it. But equity and equality is not simply about man and woman. It is also about employer and employee. And we cannot create a situation where the employer is disadvantaged while the employee continues to benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now invite the reply speaker from team opposition to close this debate.
Honorable judges, fellow Jamaicans, parental leave should be afforded equally to both parents in the public sector. Yes, you may consider that men can take compassionate leave and vacation leave, but there are times when men will have death in the family, death of mothers or siblings, and will need the leave to rely on these type of leave for other family engagement. A tired man cannot be productive. We're not saying that a man cannot work during this period, but let us help save the men from themselves. Men oftentimes do not like to say they are sick or feel tired. But if the paternity leave is offered, they will get rest. And when they return to work, they will be more productive. The government is the employer of choice. You talk about the taxi man. any good thing for the Jamaican citizens must be set an example of by the Jamaican government. And it will further trickle down to the Taxi Association of Jamaica. So those men will eventually benefit from paternity leave. The cost of paternity leave is definitely not an issue. The estimated maximum cost is 200 million per year, which is just 5% of the extra 4 billion tax revenue collected. Not to mention the fact that Jamaica has just received a whopping 14 billion tax break. We have clearly shown that equal parental leave will be the benefit of well-being of families, gender equality, beneficial cost-wise in the long term, supporting the mother's career, and in reducing psychological impact on having a child for the mother, and fathers are affected too, as you agree with me, my worthy opponents. There is no doubt that this should be immediately implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much for concluding with those points of order. We now invite the teams to cross the floor to shake hands while the judges leave to deliberate for 15 minutes. Well, about 15 minutes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you just to give both teams a round of applause? Thank you very much. We do understand how difficult this can be. This is the first match of competition, so we're appreciate that. But we thought you both did really well. Alright, I'll try to be quick, but I also want to be thorough so that we understand how and then just start by saying that the decision was a unanimous one. So all three judges were unanimous. And the scores were very similar, maybe a point or two but they were essentially really close. So the motion before the House today is this House would offer paternity leave in the same way to fathers in the public sector in the way that it is done to mothers. We saw the first speaker coming up and painting this picture. That, well, let me start with the definition. So paid paternity leave, well, paid or unpaid leave actually, immediately upon the birth of the child. And there was no real context in terms of, well, we saw that, the employee had to be employed for 12 months and 8 weeks on full salary. But in terms of the problem that we're trying to solve, there's no real contextualization of the problem. But what we got though was this idea of gender inequality. And for the T proposition, that was something that we wanted to solve in the realm of the public sector. In terms of the funding, she said that there's $4 billion in budget surplus, and money we take from that. We don't want to get about $200 billion to fund this particular policy. So it was definitely good. We thought it was credible. We thought it was something that we could run with. The substantive point was really around bonding with the newborn. And the way that we've created a situation allows mothers to have bonding time with babies. We want to create the same thing for fathers in the public sector. Again, we thought this was credible. So essentially, we want to remove the gender bias. Opposition came up and they responded to a couple of, one of the main points, and it was maternity leave. Essentially, they were agreeing with the proposition that paternity leave should be granted in the public sector, but the point of deviation is really around the sameness of the way in which it was being granted. So we thought, this is an interesting matchup, because up until this point, the proposition assumed, or their argument assumed, that the opposition is going to fundamentally disagree with the notion that paternity leave should be granted to workers or to males in the public sector. So this idea of sameness created an interesting clash for us. They talked about the genesis of maternity leave and why maternity leave in Jamaica is constructed in the way that it is, because mothers go through this period of pregnancy and childbirth that creates enormous strain on the body and requires some biological recovery. That is not required for fathers, and for that main reason, we cannot give paternity leave to fathers in the same way. What we did not get from side opposition, though, is okay, fine, so you don't want it to be the same way, so what way are you proposing? Granted, there is no burden on, in a policy debate, there's no real burden on the opposing team to present a counter policy. But what would have been nice is to deepen that level of analysis. However, there was no real challenge from that opposition on what that world looks like. Okay, so you don't want it to be the same way. So let me hear what your world looks like. So at no point did a challenge come from team proposition around this world that the opposing team was painting. Alright, fair enough. I said I wanted to be quick, but I wanted to be thorough. So you understand where we came from. Let me
put you under the same pressure we did.
So we saw some of the points coming up. We talked about benefits. We talked about benefits for families and fathers in particular, and this idea around the sleep deprivation, so and how that is actually linked to a number of other ills in society, so linked effects associated with that. The second speaker came and said, actually, those were interesting numbers and interesting claims, but the actual statistics and evidence does not back that up. So the link that you made between sleep deprivation and those fatalities was one that was unfounded. Again, I wasn't responding, so we thought that the central line of argument in the second speech was dealt with or handled very effectively by the second speaker. So we thought the point was actually demolished. And we saw again another interesting line of argument regarding the socio-cultural realities of the context, which was hammered all the way through by the third speaker. And it was actually a very interesting case. So in your world, if we're going to allow fathers to have paternity leave in the same way that mothers do, how do you safeguard against paternity fraud or paternity leave fraud, which really amounts to a father being able to claim for paternity leave in one instance, 3 months later or 2 months later, claiming for paternity leave. So there was no real context. So one of the things that we would encourage proposing teams to do is to contextualize the motion in a way that allows you some safeguard. So it could be a case in the same way, and by that we mean the same length of time, or in the same way, and by that we mean they will be paid just as much as mothers are paid. So you want to ensure that you contextualize the motion in a way that allows you to defend your territory more adequately. Based on what I have said and based on the strength of the argument, the judges found that team opposition, the team from the Jamaica Customs, have won the debate. So the out of 320, the Jamaica Customs has 256 points, and the National Board Agency in opposition has 220 points. The commendable speaker in this match goes to the second speaker, that's Kingsley. And the best debater in this match, 83 points, goes to Marcus. Again, you want additional feedback on the middle level of the judges while we set up for the next.
Thank you.